Hello everyone and welcome to Lush and Salty Aquariums. My name is Stefan. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. I thought it would be a good time to do a face-to-face and talk about a few things that I've been thinking about. And I wanted to be a little bit more up close and personal and give you a face for this channel. The person who has shown you his fish room and taken you on my journey of learning and discovery in the super fabulous hobby. And I've learned so much from so many of you, and that's partly of what I would like to talk about with you right now in this video. So in the video before this, I talked about my newest aquarium, a nano 5.5 gallon. It's the UNS 25T, and I erroneously called it a Walstad type aquarium, or rather I had converted it to a Walstad from a more traditional aquascape, in that I took out the wood and the stone to make room for more plants, and I named that a Walstad Aquarium. Now, technically I didn't literally declare it that, but I said it was Walstad-like in so many ways. In any event, that was incorrect, and one of you out there, one of my most favorite supporters, if I can have a favorite amongst all of you, but her channel is called Morning Driftwood, and she makes lovely aquariums and posts not all the time, but periodically. So, and I love the name Morning Driftwood for obvious reasons, very poetic. But she called me on the Walstad thing and said, "Don't you mean a Dutch Style Aquarium?" And other people immediately declared that perhaps what I had built wasn't a Walstad, and she said it was a Dutch Style, and that is correct. I'd like to say that it wasn't that I was ignorant, but rather I misspoke. And folks, none of this matters. This is all just in fun and in learning. And so we're not, this isn't a mea culpa, like an apology video for anything. But I was wrong. And the funny thing about it, as I corrected the post, I took off the thumbnail and renamed it something more generic, and reviewed the text and answered all the commenters who had suggested that it wasn't a Walstad. And by the way, a Walstad aquarium is, tends to be a dirted tank with no filtration, no CO2, all plants. And so in some respects, what I had converted that aquarium to was a Walstad, but it really, really was a Dutch style aquarium, and I know that. Why didn't I call it that? This is one of the things about me that probably frustrates me more than anyone else. I sometimes get like a brain freeze where I absolutely think one word is another word, or I use the word thinking it means something else, even though I know empirically it does not. And I don't know if that's a medical thing or just a tick, a nervous tick when I'm recording videos. I recall, and I did a lot of thinking about this because, part of the fun of learning and discovering, and what YouTube and the fish tube community can offer up to people like me, people like you, is this ability to reflect on what we're doing and how we're portraying ourselves in real time with real people and real feedback. So a little story, back when I was in advertising, and that was my big dumb job for a long, long time. I worked at the Leo Burnett Company here in Chicago and other agencies, and did a lot of neat stuff in the creative department. So I was a creative director, a madman although my period of time came after that one. I'm not that old. But I remember I was writing a blurb or something for Adweek, which is one of the trade publications, and I was critiquing a beer commercial, and back then beer commercials, I think it was the 90s or the early 2000s or something. Beer commercials were ubiquitous, they were everywhere. This is more or less right at the cusp of the internet, and so the internet hadn't destroyed advertising as we know it. And anyway, I was, almost famous in my respected field, so I was asked to criticize a beer commercial for one reason or another. And without naming names, I said that this commercial, and I'm paraphrasing myself, as I can't find that old text and I didn't look for it, but I remember the incident. I said that commercial represented the nadir of modern advertising, and I had put it into context. I thought the word nadir, big shot writer that I was, I thought the word nadir meant, the apex, the top, the pinnacle. And I used it that way when in fact I should have said apex or pinnacle, or the word that really is the antithesis of nadir is zenith, right? And so I call this thing the nadir of advertising in that category. So the creators of that beer commercial replied, and I got a personal letter in the snail mail to my office here in Chicago saying, I was very disappointed to see your piece in Adweek calling our creative the nadir of advertising, blah, blah, blah. I respected you, didn't think you would kind of stoop to such low ball. And I looked, I was like, yikes, my heart went up into my throat, and I was like, what did I do? Nadir, oh my God, nadir means the absolute opposite of what I thought it meant. It means, an awful low. It's like a fancy word for the lowest of the low, right? And so I, of course, tried to do a mea culpa, had Adweek publish, a letter to the reply, etc. But the damage was done, and it was embarrassing on many levels, personal and professional. I mean, I'm a writer, folks, and I use the word not just somewhat incorrectly, but I used the exact wrong word. I couldn't have picked a worse word, and of course, and it was taken with offense by the people I was critiquing. And the commercial, good, bad, or otherwise, was not the nadir of anything, right? And so with and that long story, I hope you found it as sort of interesting and haven't long left this video, but in any event, the Walstad Dutch thing reminded me heavily of that incident. I swear I shoulda, coulda, woulda said Dutch Style Aquarium, but for whatever reason, I locked onto Walstad, and it wasn't until I was reminded and really had to think about it that the light bulb went off over my head, like dun da da da, and I said, F me. I did it again, and I immediately went back in time to that incident that I just described. That also, part of what I wanted to talk about, building off of that, is since a lot of us, especially me, are doing these videos in real time, I don't use editing software, I don't go back, I don't have a team. I set this camera up right here in my dining room in front of my beautiful display tank on a block of wood with a rock behind it so it would stay stationary and I didn't have to hold it like that. So my tech for making videos is nil, is the nadir of technology for filmmaking. And I do apologize for that, but I'm not really monetizing this or doing anything like that. I'm a hobbyist and a father and a husband, and I'm not trying to get any more obsessed with this fish tubing than I already am. But it's kind of interesting, all the little foibles that I discover, the mistakes, the errors, the misspeakings, and sometimes I can correct them and sometimes I can't. And since the videos aren't, journalism, it's not the New York Times, I don't have fact checkers. You're my fact checkers, or my own thick skull, the brain matter that's still intact in there will rattle around and give me a better, oh, I should have said that. And I'm not going to go remake a whole video. I mean, this is a special occurrence because I've been thinking so much about it. But generally speaking, once the video is out, a few days go by, people see it, it tails off, and I do something else. And it's about the fish and the plants. It's not about self-discovery. That's not why you're coming to this channel. And that's why a video like what I'm doing now is an anomaly, a super, once a year type thing. But it gives you a chance to see me and, put a face to what I'm doing here, and also to let me tell you about what happened in that particular instance and how it has happened, not time and again, but periodically. For example, when I'm writing a post or doing a post and I'm showing off some of my Coradoras, which I love, they're so, I've got pandas, I've got longfin albinos that are a real crowd pleaser. And if you find, the videos with the white, the albino longfin Coradoras, that tends to be the centerpiece of that particular aquarium, and often the crowd pleaser when folks comment on that particular aquarium. And it's pretty easy to find. I've got 6, 7 aquariums, and I generally cycle through. But when I'm writing the description for the video or the headline, I always want to put an A, the letter A, in Coryadora. Coryadora, Coryadora. But there is no A, it's Coryadora. Yet my brain, the wiring, the thick skull, whatever you want to call it, the hard wiring, I still spell check, even though it's been 1,000 times and I know there's no A, I still always check. And it's like a cousin of the Walstad Dutch thing. It's somehow a tick that gets me to do something wrong, even though I absolutely know better. And I'm wondering if any of you have something like that going on. As a writer by trade and a very curious person, I've always looked at human behavior through an oddball lens. Little things I really, really notice, and I think it's fascinating when people, generally my family, my few friends, when I observe certain things that they say and do, and that they say and do more than once, it becomes part of who they are. I reflect on that and I wonder, obviously these are interesting, smart people, and many of them more interesting and smarter than me. So it's a behavioral thing. For example, certain words that people use all the time, it's considered a nervous tick. There's those that speech giving course that tries to train you out of it. Yet people, while they're talking and in real time, thinking out loud, I call it, thinking out loud. That means there are gaps and spaces that you have to fill in order to keep up with your thinking or to reel your thinking in. The most common ones would be like and you know, and I use all the time. If I had my AI chat bot go through just this video, there's probably 100 UH, interspersed in between my speaking. And I wish that I didn't do that, because sounds like Patrick from SpongeBob, like but it's something that I do. Hopefully it just gets lost in translation, just kind of flows with my speaking patterns. Teenagers, at least when I was a teenager, always used the word like and interspersed that constantly, so that everything became a metaphor, you know, or an analogy, you know, like you know. I mean, it was considered Valley Girl speak when Frank Zappa did that, you know, one of his last hit songs. He didn't have very many hits at all. That wasn't his MO. But Valley Girl took on, you know, became a cultural thing back when it was released, and featured his daughter just babbling away in Valley Girl, California type speak, and she kept saying like, and it was hilarious. But in fact, a jillion people, especially young people, do the very same thing to this day, you know, and they're not just from the Valley, they're from everywhere. And I noticed stuff like that, and I politely have mentioned it to my daughters as they were growing up, like, you might not want to use like so much. And you know, I just did. If you rewind this tape, I actually just said like, if you know, and I used it the very way I was criticizing it. So it's part of this whole self-reflection essay that I'm talking about here. Is many times the old adage, if you spot it, you got it. And I learned that a long time ago. You know, I would spot something that vexed me about myself, and I would spot it in others, and that's part of it. And so when I watch like a lot of your videos to try to pull this all back to the fish tube thing, I can't help but compare and contrast how you're the same and you're different from me, you know, not just in the fish, but in your personality and in your perspective. And that's what sort of attracts me to other people, especially like on the fish tube. And I am completely in awe and admire so many of you out there for the way you are able to portray and talk about your aquariums and this hobby. And I'm charmed by it. I'm charmed by any number of you out there. Alex at Fish Theory, you know, I could just listen to that person and his story, and when he talks about his health issues and mixes it in with his amazing knowledge about fish keeping, I find that to be must-see TV. You know, I have to watch it. And there are others out there, and you know them and I know them, men and women, young and old, who have a personality that goes along with their aquariums, and it becomes part of the attraction. So in this spirit of thinking out loud, as I have a beeping going on in the kitchen, another real-time thing that I'm not going to go back and edit that beeping out. I'm just aware of it, and then it makes me conscious of the time, and I look at the phone and I see the amount of minutes, and I'm thinking, well, let's wrap this up. And I hope you can appreciate what I was trying to do here. I was trying to not whitewash my mea culpa about the Walstad Dutch thing. I mean, in the end, really, it doesn't freaking matter. You know, I'm not getting paid to be a resource. I'm trying to learn more and more and more about this hobby, and also inspire other people as they've inspired me, as you've inspired me. And so learning from my mistakes seems like in the top 5 things that can happen if we get into our fish tubing and get deeper into this hobby. And that's exactly what happened here. And I wanted to share that with you for whatever reason, just because I can, and because I hope maybe you can relate and get something out of it. All right, folks, as always, keep your hands in the tank, albeit carefully. See, I've qualified my own homemade tagline, keep your hands in the tank, because I've realized that's not always the healthiest, best thing to do, to keep our hands in the tank. It was supposed to be a charming way to say I'm always working on my aquariums, aquascaping and the like, but I've since begun qualifying it with albeit carefully. So that's another great example, and I'm glad I was able to kind of throw that in, because it's a fitting way to end this video. Always keep your hands in the tank, albeit carefully, and ciao for now. Beep!